authors, it's Melody here. Welcome to Author Nation. Today I'm going to talk about empathy and why empathy is so important when you're crafting your stories. Whether you're writing for memoir or another nonfiction book, if you are an author, you need to build your empathy muscle and you need to build it for your stories in your book, because your book, no matter what it is, needs stories. And some stories need empathy, more empathy than other stories. Stories of change, for example, right? Changing attitudes on homelessness or drug addiction or mental health. Or stories about people who are different than the audience. People who live alternative lifestyles or are marginalized in some way. You know, the van life is often misunderstood. Is there a lifestyle that you just don't get? Or traditional bad guys. The movie The Joker comes to mind, right? They were trying to build a level of empathy for the Joker, who is a traditional bad guy, right? So these stories need empathy. All your stories need empathy, but these stories especially need empathy for your readers to understand and come on that journey with you. So if you are writing stories, if you're writing a book to change the world, and most people who write nonfiction are writing because they want to change someone, if that's what you're doing, which I think you are, you want to develop your empathy muscle. And the question is, how do you do that? Here are some ideas to help you build your empathy muscle. Look at the other side. Walk in their shoes. Read their arguments with a view to understanding them, their fears, their beliefs, what they believe is right and wrong. So if you are on the political left, start reading about the political right. If you're on the political right, start reading about the political left. Don't just go, it's a terrible argument, they're stupid. Read it. Read it with the intention of really, truly understanding why they think the way they do. That's going to really help you with your empathy. So if there's another side to the story that you just don't get, go find people and read about it. Now, I'm not suggesting you should read things about hate, right? Hate speech, denying the Holocaust, things that make one race better or not as good as another race. I'm not talking about that kind of other side. I'm talking about the other side where, two religions just have different ideas, but they aren't necessarily, hateful to one another. But go read the other side. See, everyone is human, even the bad guy. Some of us, including me, I have a father who is a bad guy, and I'm not ever going to defend any of his actions. And yet, as horrible as he is, he's human. And so I try to see him as human. Not to defend him, not to say that what he's done is right or wrong or anything like that, but that even the worst of the worst are still human. Next, examine your biases, right? What do you take for granted when you see the other side? I see this when people talk about privilege. I'm in many ways very privileged. And sometimes we don't see our own privilege. We don't see our own bias. And so taking the time to look for that bias is really, really important, and that will build your empathy muscle. Next, be curious. And I think that ties into everything I've said so far, right? Be curious. Be curious about what the other side thinks. And I'm not saying when you're humanizing the bad guy that you're excusing them or giving them reasons or forgiving them. I'm not saying that at all, but just see them as human, right? Examine your biases. Be curious in order to do that. And when you're curious, you begin asking lots of questions, lots and lots and lots of questions. And that's good. And as you're reviewing things, as you're researching, as you're looking into things, don't just use your head, use your heart as well. Try to understand not just on an intellectual level, but on that deeper emotional plane. Listen actively. When somebody is talking about ideas that you don't agree with, we often I'm just going to come up with my answer, No, just sit and listen actively. Go onto YouTube and find TED Talks you don't agree with and just listen actively to them, right? Explore differences. But when you see someone who's very different with you, when you see someone who's on the other side of the argument, also look for similarities. How are we the same? If you're a sworn enemy of someone, try to figure out how you're the same, not just how you're different. Because if we're all human, we are all the same in some way, right? And read. reading is a wonderful way to build your empathy muscle. So go read. This is a really tough topic for a lot of people, and it can be really, really scary because we're so, our ideas, our opinions in our minds become facts, and this is true, and it can't be different because then my world would fall apart. It can be really scary to think about building that empathy muscle. But if you're going to be a nonfiction author and you want to change the world, then I suggest you work at listening, thinking through things, not with your head, but your heart, examining things from different areas, understanding your own bias, looking at the other side so that you build your empathy muscle. In any book you're writing, you don't want to lose your audience because you're not showing your humanness, and you're not showing the humanness of all your characters, especially in memoir, right? Sometimes in memoir, we write about trauma. And so, we can still be really angry, and so that can come out as accusations and blame, and you're out, writing your memoir, and you're out there purposefully trying to hurt somebody who's hurt you. And in the end, this might show more about you than it does about them. And I'm not saying don't be honest if someone has hurt you. I'm not saying, I forgive everyone who's ever been bad to me. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying think about how you present it. If you are still raging, then maybe it's not time to write about it, because that person who hurt you is also a human being. And I'm not saying hide what they've done, but you want to have that full, a story is complete when we see all the different sides. And trust me, showing the different sides to your reader doesn't mean they're going to run off and think somebody else is right and you're wrong. We're smart, your readers are intelligent. We're reading your book because we're coming with you on your journey. And if you show us somebody who's hurt you and you can see those both sides, we're going to have empathy, even more empathy for you, right? So here are some ways you can help your readers feel empathy and join you on your journey in the book. And it takes things that you can do to help them, right? Perspective. Give them the same situation, but give them different angles. Explore different paths to the same place. Ask questions, right? And sometimes questions aren't even answered, but trust them to come up with their own answers based on the information you've given. Sometimes forgiveness, not always, but sometimes forgiveness. I know this is a tough one for me, but if you can find some forgiveness in your memoir, that would be great. Dignity. So no matter how evil somebody else is, I would suggest not stripping them of their dignity. Have mercy for the undeserving, if that makes sense. There's a great book called Mercy. If you want to really dig into what I'm talking about when I say mercy, read that book. Allow your story and allow your characters to have a push and a pull rather than a heels dug in attitude. And that will help your readers open up and build empathy. And then they'll walk away from your book a brand new person. That's about empathy. And I'd really love to hear your comments on what you think. This is a really tough subject, and it's something that as an editor, I often help people kind of come around to sometimes in memoir. If you have any comments, please drop them down there in the comment section. I would love to hear them. And as you're writing your book, build your own empathy so you can help your readers build empathy. And if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up.